Kid by the Side of the Road by SAVIN. We've all been bystanders watching events go by, not understanding their true meaning. Continued at the bottom of page 34. If you're a part of that organization or others like it, you need to think up again about what you're actually involved with and whether or not you are just a useful tool in Satan's designs. In reality, since Pike laid out their Masonic game plan, what has happened to Earth's people? We've been corralled, herded, and stampeded towards some kind of a grand and ultimately cataclysmic event, after which all the children of Adam should kneel under their subjugation. They wish all the planet's lawful governments to be wiped out. Then and only then can their worldwide Roman-type fascist, dictatorial, and one-world government rule over the compliant communist and socialist communities that they have made. For those in search of a greater understanding on these matters, research the fasci's lapel pin, mace of the United States, House of Representatives, which had tremendous symbolic meaning when Nancy Pelosi wore it during the T impeachment hearings. Also, take a look at the fascist-rooted bundles of wood rods that are prominently displayed right there on both sides of the speaker's chair and podium. That's not what we want, and it's not what is right. How much blood needs to be spilled on their path to get there? And anyone who doesn't think they've been successful at pulling this off is not paying attention. Though our corrupt media and other institutions have caused it to immediately be dismissed as a crazy conspiracy theory. The Illuminati is real. But maybe a better way to approach family and friends with the information is to call them the bloodline families. 2 months before we established our United States with our Declaration of Independence, they began their organization on May 1st of 1776 in Bavaria, Germany. So these Illuminati bloodline families were hard at it, even getting their side going a bit ahead of us. Ever since, they have been infiltrating our society's leadership positions with people who understand and agree with them. In fact, a lot of our founding fathers were in these organizations. However, over the course the Revolutionary War with England and continuing through the years after many of them disavowed those relationships with the Masons, as well as other secret handshake clubs like the Illuminati. Why? They came to understand that these organizations weren't actually working in the best interests of America, that these secret societies had plans and ideals against the independence of individual Americans that allows us to live our own desired way of life. So, many of those men repented of their earlier involvement in those frat boy groups that are really being led by Satanists and subversives. This is that moment when we need people to think again about what they're actually involved in and who they're really associating with. Then choose good over evil. That's what this is all about. And at this time, in this moment, it's high noon in America. Joe Biden said the Democrats need to figure out how to work with Republicans. But then, while making a gesture like he was holding an assault rifle, Biden added this: if we can't, it's going to get physical. Look at the picture of that event and then tell me I'm not seeing the shooting gesture. Hello? And what is the context of his declaration? He's letting us know they are coming after Republicans. Really? If you or I did that, imagine the outrage and media storm inflicted to tear us apart, the drama and operatic responses. That is bullshit. They are the ones pushing this fight to a head as they brag about bringing flesh eaters into our White House. Put up their monuments to Isis and Osiris, work at allowing Satan to rule over our country, and use their owl symbols. Owl symbols. While practicing their rituals in secret little handshake clubs all over Washington, D.C. They're the ones doing that. It's not what we want and not something common in America. Instead, this agenda is being imposed on us by a cult that wants just one international society that has them governing the whole world. Their plan originated in Europe, and it wasn't just London, it's Bavarian Germany. The Q team asked the question of whether the UK's Theresa May, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 2016 to 29, Germany's Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany since 2005, and Lithuania's Dalia Grybauskaite, President of Lithuania from 2009 until 2019, are sisters. When that information was first put out there, it was, of course, dismissed by those complicit. Yet they never denied the claim. Even some good people had a hard time accepting that one and thought maybe uh, even some good people had a hard time accepting that one and thought maybe we were just moving too fast at uncovering the conspiracy. At that point, they could not accept something so explosive. There are a number of very interesting theories about their parentage, if indeed they are sisters. But now we're coming of age, having grown up in this false narrative crafted to deceive us. Again, one aspect of all this that we need to be mindful of and not forget, especially folks a bit older like myself, is our country's defining moment that came much prior to 9/11. With the whole world watching in 1963, they assassinated our president. With the whole world watching in 1963, they assassinated our president. About that tragedy, there was no truth told to us by the fake media from the halls of Congress or coming out of the White House. All we got were lies. All we got were lies. Every word was a lie, including including that a lone gunman killed the president. Would you like to hear that again? With the whole world watching in 1963, they assassinated our president. About that tragedy, there was no truth told to us by the fake media from the halls of Congress or coming out of the White House. All we got were lies. Every word was a lie, including that a lone gunman killed the president. That was one of the most monstrous lies in the history of this country and even the world. And why did they kill Kennedy? Why did they kill Kennedy? It was those same secret societies. It was those same secret societies. And why did they kill Kennedy? It was those same secret societies ruling us from afar, manipulating us from behind the curtains. And those of us around at that time stood by the side of the road, watching and participating in the aftermath. Every last one of us has grown up in the shadow of that moment. The people who pulled that off have continued all their evil machinations while we came of age watching. For their purposes, they've continued to deceive us ever since, putting their players in governance over us, controlling, managing, and steering our course from foreign soil. They've put us into wars where our parents, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, wives, and husbands have been injured and killed. They've also been destroying other countries as part of their plan to force migrations, resulting in the side damage of millions more dead. And it's all done to facilitate the construction of their new world order, built on a foundation of these people's bones. If they continue to have their way, it will be the billions more. Those reading this need to be part of the solution instead of compounding the problem. We cannot stand idly by and accept their plans for us. Had they gotten their way, we would not have President T. But with the effort to stop their satanic aspirations, our problem is this: the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. President T is a nail sticking up. Like me and many of you, a lot of us are also sticking up, but they want to hammer us back down, subjugating and destroying every individual dissenter as their method to keep the world's people under their thumb. Now, we don't have to be ridiculous with how we go about it, and certainly don't need to act like assholes. But if you're not taking a stand, being outspoken, and clearly making your views understood within your family and community, now is that moment to stand and be counted. If you don't, down the road you're going to wish you had. You're going to wish you had. Because this revolution is well underway and will continue. These next few years are going to set the world on fire. You need to be part of bringing that change. The crisis we must deal with are whether we end up having to do it by ourselves, or if we are the ones letting others do it alone. Either way, that puts pressure on those taking a stand to help eliminate this threat to our country and the world. If there is just a nail sticking up here or there, those will easily be taken out by these globalists, leaving them to grab everything without opposition. These people will snipe out the individual threats. When it was just one president and a few around him being surrounded by these traitors with their different ideas and perspective, those patriots could be hunted and eliminated. And seeing that others who might have thought to stick up also became discouraged as they duck and cover. For the traitors, it is mission accomplished, and once more, positive reform does not go forward. So, these people have kept getting their way through drug money scores in Southeast Asia and South America. With those ill-gotten gains, they own politicians, buy off police, change the course of elections, and promote their people up through the ranks to top positions at the news networks, in Hollywood, and at the FBI, CIA, and every other agency. They can buy anything and anyone, while all we get are lies and fakes. And they've been successful at their schemes for a long time. In 1912, Hitler went to London, where he learned from the Tavistock Institute, Britain's social engineering organization, another globalist operation. He practiced the presentation and oration for his future speeches, which became famous. Some scholars provide documentation asserting that Hitler himself was trained or programmed, in today's terms, we would say MK Ultra'd at Tavistock. Ultimately, this would have made him a British intelligence tool in the years before the war. About the same time, Hitler was visiting Vienna, Austria. Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin were also there. Did these men hang out together? Who knows if they crossed paths, but we do not understand Vienna. But we do understand Vienna has the bankers who promote the future leaders they can control. After Vienna, these men were suddenly able to go out and start their own expensive revolutions. From the London and New York bankers, money was made available to take out Russia's ruling class through the ensuing communist revolution. Over and over for centuries, they've been executing their subversive designs around our planet, decade after decade after decade. We've been continuously fighting this little cartel of clans. And now, in our time, what are their tactics against us? These globalistas use their intelligence operations and policing agencies while colluding to control businesses and leverage entire governments around the world. A decade after creating the CIA in the summer of 1947, near the end of his life, Truman stated his belief that the CIA had become the equivalent of the American Gestapo. He regretted ever approving its establishment. Where does all this money, expertise, and technology keep coming from to make Iran the best enemy money can buy? Just as they did with Russia a century ago. How about North Korea? And what about the most recent example? Billions and billions were airlifted into Tehran, Iran, at the end of the Obama administration, once again perpetuating and funding another $150 billion best enemy money can buy. Even with inflation, that kind of money still buys a world-class enemy. We are being bounced back and forth across the globe like a ping pong ball. As soon as Iran is under control, North Korea erupts. When North Korea seems to be handled, Syria erupts. Then it's Taiwan. After which, our next problem pops up with Ukraine. On and on it goes. These are globalist-induced gyrations to continuously keep us off balance and unable to focus. The purpose of which is to con us into perpetual servitude, manufacturing and wielding swords instead of the productive plowshares we could be putting to work to help people, not fighting with and killing them. In this way, they dominate and control the world according to their globalist ideologies, not a classic and correct American ideology and mindset. Using perversions of true American views, we are manipulated to do their bidding in the projection of ourselves out to the world. The American way is not one of being our brother's keeper. Instead, it's to be our brother's brother. It's to be our brother's brother. Reaching out to help other nations as opposed to the constant thirst for domination that those colonizing and centralizing crown families like to put people under. They manufacture enemies to divide and weaken us, enriching themselves and enslaving us. They get us constantly focused on these villains that they claim are out to end our way of life. Meanwhile, their daily treason is uninterrupted as they use sleight of hand, their magical illusion, to keep us looking the other way. Who put up the money for London's Tavistock Institute, created in 1946, as well as the Rand Corporation, created in 1948? Here in the US, both of which look for ways to engineer, manipulate societies. Why did they put Lookout Mountain Air Force Base at the top of Laurel Canyon in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles? I'll read that again. Why did they put Lookout Mountain Air Force Base at the top of Laurel Canyon in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles? Who goes there and for what purpose? They claim it was a place to perfect high technology camera equipment near the film capital of the world, as well as develop and edit film of nuclear detonations. But that's not the whole story. For their manipulative purposes, it was also a facility where they trained future movie stars, musicians, media figures, and other influencers used in the globalistas' propaganda. From this hub location, they could influence American society and the rest of the world, assisting entertainers to be successful in exchange, promoting the globalistas' agenda. And that included superstar Marilyn Monroe, who got a top secret security clearance for Lookout Mountain Air Force Base. What was she doing there? Well, Monroe was made available to kick off Playboy magazine's first issue in 1953. She was a national darling who had never shown her naked body until needed for that first Playboy centerfold. Where did the founder of Playboy, Hugh Hefner, get his money? It took 70 years, but the CIA is finally admitting they created honeypot traps like Playboy and the sexually enticing Playboy Mansion to make sex with beautiful women available so that they could blackmail those who could not resist the temptation. Their story claims it was only for blackmailing foreign leaders who were given access to the sex mansion. But were foreigners the only ones? What about all the movies influenced through that Laurel Canyon operation, as well as singers from Lookout Mountain, who just happened to cause our social revolution in the 1960s? It was the same sort of music led social change happening at that time in England. And by the way, the rumors of Paul McCartney's death in the 60s are true. That famous leader of the most famous band in history, the Beatles, actually died on November 9th, 11/9 of 1966, after which he was replaced by a look-alike. Check into it for yourself. Even when the opposite is true, they control the way society thinks so they can make you believe anything they want, including whether a person is dead or alive. Those who poke their head up to say, no, 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 I don't believe that, quickly get hammered down. And if the resistance to their outright lies continues, the manipulators bring out the sledgehammer. Still, more denial of their deception will cause the dissenter to be pulverized into nothing. That simple process continues indefinitely as long as it's just a nail sticking up here and there. The only way we win from this point forward is the same way we were successful with our first revolution against the same people. If the signers of that freedom and independence declaration had been the only ones to stand up, the Brits would have captured and hung every last one. As it was, England did get to a bunch of them, destroying their properties and even entire families. Not everyone walked away. Along with those signers of our declaration, Americans stood up and got counted, just as we collectively must do today. We need to say we won't accept any more fake news, phony stars, and bogus wars. We won't fall for it the next time we won't fall for it the next time they try baiting us with deceptive narratives like, hey, look, this is horrible. The babies are being taken out of their incubators somewhere in the world, so we have to bomb the people responsible. It's for the babies. Or, I think a boat fired a bullet at our ship somewhere in the Gulf of Tonkin, or a drone in the Strait of Hormuz. Let's go to war. Then there are the really big events they pull off, like 9/11, which resulted in us supposedly having to blast Iraq and Afghanistan to smithereens. What did those countries have to do with anything that happened on 9/11? Do you understand that they took down our enormous twin towers in a ritual moment? In a ritual moment. In a ritual moment. In a ritual moment. In a ritual moment. Just like the event I referenced earlier about their ritual time of 11:54 in Washington, D.C. What is the occult and hidden religious significance with their large number of ritual buildings that they had methodically and precisely constructed around the sacrificial altar site of the Twin Towers? The place where the veil between the earthly and demonic realms was ritually rent and opened by them on 9/11. Within an approximate 10-mile radius of the towers is much of their deity type statuary standing as idolic and demonic witnesses to the destructive events of 9/11. These many ritual buildings in the these many ritual buildings and the statuary that surround the area includes another of their symbols honoring Isis, their Egyptian goddess. They stuck it right in the middle of New York Harbor. It's our so called Statue of Liberty. Like their flame at JFK's grave, that ISIS torch is part of their satanic worship. Again, multiple structures and buildings around the vicinity of where those towers were have a ritual meaning, which includes a fairly new ornament that mysteriously popped onto the scene several years ago, the Wall Street Bull. It must have taken a sculptor tens of thousands of dollars to create that bull statue, which is one more of their ritual symbols. I thought that was always there. Even the United Nations is backing all this up, helping facilitate their plans for us. Why? For what purposes? The same people that funded the property given for the UN also put up the money for those 9/11 buildings. It was the Rockefeller family. From that family, have we been subjected to Trojan horses that most haven't known about? Yes, Bill Clinton is a Rockefeller. His dad is Winthrop Rockefeller. What you got with Clinton was a story, another false narrative for you to believe. They told us William Blythe was his father, but it's more fake news. You wouldn't elect him to office as a Rockefeller, so they had to give him a different name. That false identity kept you from shutting him down, but there he is, hiding in plain sight. And there are a lot of those disguised players around the world, creating whatever illusions they want for us as wizards. That is what they take delight in. And those same self proclaimed sorcerers tell us Michael Rockefeller disappeared on a trip to Papua New Guinea. What really happened to him? Many have come to believe, as I do, that he is still alive today, and you know him as Forrest Gump and Woody. He is one of the most elite Hollywood stars and another product from Disney. Tom Hanks was a Disney kid. To fool us, they use makeup and surgery as well as contrived histories. His big breakthrough was a romantic fantasy movie about a mermaid who falls in love with a human. It was the 1984 Disney movie Splash, which featured him and Daryl Hannah. So, wake up! Stop buying their lies! Like me in the past, you've probably been just another kid on the side of the street at critical moments in our history, often not completely understanding what the hell is happening as they play on your patriotism because they see you as so dumb you won't figure it out. They feed on you. They feed on who you are and what you desire to be. But now you have to grow up. This book is about the moment where we all mature as a nation, take on our responsibilities as adults, and begin to say, no more. We will not be your slaves anymore. We will no longer buy your lies. We're done with that. And if you want to try manipulating our elections again, attempting to decide who we get, or if you try to snipe out our choice, this time it will matter. We're not going to continue to let one family of good people whose head occupies the White House carry the weight for our whole nation. And even if you succeed in taking on, and even if you succeed in taking an entire family out, though we won't let you, the rest of us will still be standing here together against you. With each instance where they have targeted one of our presidents, it's always been more than that. When they are targeting our leaders up to and including our president, the crosshairs are just as much or even more so on us as a people. These leaders are our chosen representatives to do our will according to the principles and laws embedded in the Constitution and its supporting documents. We don't shirk from the battle to protect the Constitution. We don't shirk from the battle to protect the Constitution and its proper administration. Rather, we put on better armor, divinely provided armor, and dig the lines deeper. When they cross our lines in the sand, we start taking them out. We are all that kid standing by the side of the road. We have all grown up in the shadow of these events. The globalistas have been relentlessly working to drive us down the cattle chute of history toward their new world order. And to that we must say, we're not going there with you. We're not doing it. We're going to kick you in the ass and boot you the hell out of our country. I'd advise you to tighten your shoelaces and run faster. Because when we get our hands on your scruffy necks, we're going to throw you in the clinker for as long as humanly possible. If you think we'll continue to put up with your shit, I'm here to tell you that's not happening. The good guys are closing ranks, and we're taking our country back. We're going to rid ourselves of you monsters and treasonous vermin. Promises made, promises kept. Some will be going to jail, and a lot more to Gitmo. In front of the whole world, we will soon see hearings where these people will be made to sit and explain why they did what they felt so justified to do. Of course, they will have their secret handshake allies in political office who will try protecting them with all sorts of stupid investigative delays and political procedures. It'll be like a scene from the Godfather movies, but in the end, this time you're going to see real prosecutions. There is a reason President T upgraded our prison holding capacity at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And it's no LARP, live action roleplay game. That our country has over 195,000 federal sealed indictments at the time of this writing. Normally, our 94 federal judicial districts carry a running average of around 1,500 total sealed indictments nationwide. So, we are now approximately 130 times the usual number of sealed indictments and still climbing. That reality is no game. It's a vacuous dream on the part of those under the cloud of indictment that these charges will somehow go away. Additionally, one sealed indictment can have up to 99 persons listed. Those people named in the indictments have no prayer that these charges will just go away. Every single sealed indictment was handed down by a federal grand jury made up of 14 to 23 citizen voters, not some political flunky like a bought off prosecutor or judge. The battles in this long war are coming to a head, and we all need to do our part assembling together in this fight. While we may have been a kid when it all started, we are not anymore. Though traumatized through several generations, we are waking and standing up to be counted in the spirit of that child who is now grown. We cannot allow those who have come of age and moved to the front of the fight to then be hammered back down, whether Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever. This is not just about one person or family. We have never wanted and don't need an American version of royalty to rule over us. From an American viewpoint, we are all royalty. Every person a sovereign in his or her own home. In this way, our enemies cannot defeat us by taking out any one individual. A great patriot example from the Democrat side was a guy you've probably not heard of. His name was Al Smith. And he was a Democrat's Democrat in the 1920s and 1930s. He was a staunch supporter of President Roosevelt. But from Smith's perspective, by 1936, the Democratic Party had become so twisted and constantly maligned for their behavior and what they supported that Smith said he was watching the party of Jefferson, Jackson, and Cleveland being turned into the party of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin. Again, respected leader who could always be counted on to cheerlead the Democrat Party. No longer wanted to be in that situation, being counted in that Democrat crowd. So Alfred Smith made a famous and final speech where he included this simple proclamation: I'm out. After which he walked away from the Democrat Party and never came back for the rest of his life. Smith would not be counted as a traitor to his fellow citizens. He would not participate in the globalistas' inspired Democratic lies. Many know President Reagan started life as a Democrat. His famous 1964 speech, A Time for Choosing, came in the shadow of that secret handshake club with globalist ideals and ambitions, who had murdered our president the previous year. Reagan's Time for Choosing speech defined him as a leader and led to him becoming governor of California and then president of the United States. Ronald Reagan's message was given after he had switched political parties. It defined the differences between the way the two organizations thought. Considering what has happened to the party over the last 30 to 40 years, just like Ronald Reagan and Al Smith, President Kennedy would have left today's Democrat Party long ago. This modern Democrat group is against JFK's character, ideals, and way of thinking. Today's Dems, such as Pelosi, Ocasio Cortez, and the Biden harassment crowd, have lost their way. On the other side, there may be many reading this who can't get excited about President T for whatever reason. Maybe it's that you think he's a bit caustic, coming across with a different demeanor than you'd like to see or think is right. It could be that you disagree with him on climate change or some other issue. Well, all right, let's have a conversation. But I would like to ask you not to think in terms of either Democrat or Republican parties who both hate him. Let me appeal to your humanity. Is the idea of murdering and dismembering children in the womb acceptable to you? Then go ahead and vote Democrat. If the idea that pedophilia is an acceptable way of life in our society and we should be more accepting of it as a nation, then vote Democrat. If you sincerely believe state child welfare agencies should take children away from their parents who own guns because you believe gun ownership and right of self defense is dangerous, then vote Democrat. If you think state agencies should be allowed to take children away because a parent wants to homeschool using religious materials, which you think are dangerous to a child's mental development, then vote Democrat. If you believe children should be mandated to receive every possible vaccine that a drug company proposes, and that the state should force parents to proceed with all immunizations or lose custody of their children, then vote Democrat. In fact, no further thought is required. Just vote a straight Democrat ticket because that's what those puppets are forced to support.